It's well over 2 years ago now that I started the carnivore diet, and my journey has been well documented on this channel. When you start something new like the carnivore diet, it goes through your mind, is this just another harebrained diet, or is this one going to actually work? And I had all of those questions in my mind when I started. You see, if you spend any sort of time online at all, you will hear two different stories about the carnivore diet. Some people are saying, look, this is just the best thing since sliced bread. And other people are saying, no, look, this thing's dangerous. It's going to give you cancer. It's going to give you all sorts of health issues in the longer term, so don't do it. So which do you believe? You've really got to navigate your own path. And I decided to give it a go. I did quite a bit of study on it, but I also had some friends who've been on it, so I thought I'm going to give this thing a try. But here I am, a bit over 2 years later, and I can tell you what's happened in my life over these last couple of years, because every 3 months for the last 2 years I've had a doctor's visit and a blood panel done so that I could keep an eye on what was happening. And I did a bit of study, enough to understand some of the main concepts in a blood panel, and I think that's worth doing for everybody. So I want you to hear this today. I'm not sharing this information as a doctor or as any kind of an expert. I'm just an ordinary guy who's about to turn 70 and wanting to take care of his health and to enjoy the later years of my life, for however many years there are. We don't know, do we? So that's where I'm coming from. Let me just give you a quick sketch of what my life was like when I started carnivore. The issues that were uppermost in my mind at the time was primarily my weight. I was about 30 kilos overweight, and I had tried every diet under the sun, and they all worked to some extent, but I could never last. I would always crash and give in, and then it would be back to square one. So I wanted to lose some weight. I was also aware after a visit to my doctor that I had what the doctor called a fatty liver. I was pre-diabetic, I had high blood pressure, and I just had a number of health conditions there that were causing me some concern. And I was wanting to know if I could lose some weight, if I could reverse a fatty liver, if I could get rid of my pre-diabetes. Definitely wanted to do that. I also had, I had inflammation. I knew that my body hurt all over. I knew that my energy was low, because if I did something one day, I would need a rest day the next day, and that sort of thing. So these were the issues that were uppermost in my mind when I started carnivore. Not long after I started, I also had a CAC test measuring the amount of calcification around your heart, the plaque measurement, and my score was pretty high, and I've done a couple of videos about that. So these were the issues on my mind. So throughout this journey, I've endeavoured to not just blindly step in, although I guess I did that, but I wanted to kind of test and monitor and navigate as I went, and to modify my course if I needed to, and to try and navigate my own path. And I think this is important for everyone in life with your health. You've got to navigate a path that's right for you, and you've got to take responsibility for that path and not relinquish it to a doctor or somebody else. So in this video, I wanted to give you a bit of a compare and contrast from where I started to where I am now, and look at some of the specifics that come out on a blood panel, and share these with you as openly and transparently as I can, to help you think through your process and your situation. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was my blood sugar, or my HbA1c, they call it on the blood panel, which measures your blood glucose. When I started carnivore, my blood glucose level was 5.7, and now after 2 and a bit years it's gone up and down a bit, but at present it's 5.6. So it hasn't altered that much. It's gone down a little bit, but not a great deal. At the same time, my fasting glucose dropped from 5.6 down to 5.0. Now, I know there's some of you that will be immediately wanting to remind me that that's not much of a change. And to be honest, it's not. But look, put this into context. I'm about to turn 70, and this is over a period of well over 2 years now, getting on for 2.5 years since I started Carnivore. And so at my age, over that sort of time period, maintaining and slightly improving my blood sugar content, I think is an achievement, because I find that a lot of people, particularly in my age group, do tend to drift a bit as the years go by, whereas I have maintained and slightly improved that figure. So for me personally, I take it as an encouragement. You take it as you will. But here's where things get really interesting when we begin to look at cholesterol. Cholesterol's a big topic today, and there are literally hundreds of doctors on YouTube and other people making videos about cholesterol. And of course, there's been a documentary come out in recent days called The Cholesterol Code, I think it's called, and that's worth having a look at. First of all, my LDL. My LDL on Carnivore has gone up. This is the one that they, I think, mistakenly call bad cholesterol, LDL. When I started Carnivore, my reading was 2.7 and it's now 3.9. So that's quite an increase in LDL. And I know that most doctors hearing that would be very concerned and want to put me on a statin, and some have tried but not succeeded. But I want to put that figure into context. And look, if you've got high LDL, particularly on the Carnivore diet, this is worth thinking about. First of all, my CRP, which measures inflammation, is really low, and that's a positive. My blood sugar markers are what my doctor calls excellent. My liver markers look really good. All of the markers that measure kidney function are really good and in the acceptable range. And so it's really just the LDL that is a little bit higher than what they call the acceptable range. But for me, when I put that alongside everything else that's looking really good and has improved, I'm not quite as worried about it as what I might have normally been. But I've got to tell you, there was one marker that did really surprise me as I looked at my results at the end of this period, and that is the triglycerides. My triglycerides are still a little bit higher than what I'd like them to be. Initially, when I started Carnivore, they dropped quite a bit, but then they've slowly come up a bit. Now, I don't know what the reason for that is. I think for my first year on Carnivore, I was pretty strict Carnivore. Now I still say I'm fairly strict, but I do have an occasional bit of fruit or some vegetables, and some people might want to crucify me for that, but I'm just navigating this path on my own. But I'm predominantly Carnivore. Also, just in the last 6 months, my HDL that had improved quite a bit has dropped a little bit just on my most recent blood test, but nothing that is, to me and to my doctor, a major concern. You see, I'm sharing this with you because some people kind of preach Carnivore as though it's going to cure every ill in your life. Now, I think Carnivore's great, and I want you to hear that, and I'm totally convinced it works, and I've just heard too many testimonies and stories of people who have shared their story with me to believe otherwise. But it is not a magic cure for every ill. I think it's a great first step in your journey back to health, but it is not the whole of the journey. It certainly wasn't for me. And as I say, I'm still on this journey. I'm still experimenting. I'm still learning. I'm still reading books and listening to videos and trying to learn more. I'm trying to navigate my own path to where I really want to be. And as I say, that's what I think you should be doing too. But I can't give you all this information without giving you some update on how do I actually feel? How do I feel in my body day to day? I'd have to say I feel so much better than what I ever did. The things that I notice is my energy levels are so much higher. My clarity of mind and thought is so much clearer. And I'd have to say that I'm generally calmer as a person on the inside. So all of those things are positive. And for somebody who's about to turn 70, to me, those things really matter. They're the things that I want in my life. I want energy. I want to be able to do the things that I want to do. I want to be able to do things every day without needing a rest day every other day. These are the things that, for me, really matter. So for me, where do I go from here? I'm going to continue on with Carnivore. I'm very committed to it, as I said. And I want to continue to monitor. I want to continue to check. I want to continue to get as much information as I can about my own health in front of me, and study enough so that I know how to understand the figures and how to interpret those lists of numbers on a blood panel. That's important to me. But here's where I've gone beyond Carnivore, because I think Carnivore is a really great starting point. It is, I think, the essential starting point. I'd say it that strongly. But for me, this journey has been far more than just diet. It's been learning to deal with stress. I've learned a lot in this journey about simple practices like earthing, walking bare feet on the earth and getting that electrical charge. There's something in that. Breath work that has become very to the forefront of our attention today. There's something in that. I do 10 minutes breath work morning and night, and it certainly helps me sleep. Sleep is another one. If you're not sleeping, you're never going to be healthy if you're not sleeping and you're laying awake at night stressed or anxious about things. These are the things that you've got to deal with. And if you've followed my journey, you'll know that I regularly do things like have a sauna and have a cold plunge in icy water. Not everybody's thing, but these things have helped me, and I've used them in my journey, and I know that these things have helped me. Sometimes, you don't have anything black and white, but you can just tell some things are doing you good, and that's how I feel about sauna and cold plunge particularly. I've also just in the last 2 or 3 months started to measure what they call the HRV, which is your variable heart rate, and my resting heart rate. And I've got a little monitor that I put on each morning to get those figures. That's been fascinating for me because it actually measures your recovery. So I know that if I stack a whole lot of things in one day, if I was to do both sauna and cold plunge and aerobics and get on the rebounder and lift weights, my recovery rate would take a hit. And so for me, I've learned by watching my HRV and heart rate, I've learned to space those things out a little bit and to monitor that closely. Again, for me, this is just part of my journey and getting the information in front of me and trying to understand as much as I can. So look, I believe that I am in a vastly better place health-wise than what I was 2.5 years ago. There's no question in my mind that I'm in a better place, and I never want to go back there. And I've been able to keep the weight off, and I've been able to do so many things that I thought I would never be able to do, and I feel great. So these are all positives for me. In sharing this, I'm not trying to convince anybody, but if it doesn't convince somebody, that's okay. I'm just really sharing my own journey and my own story and some of the things that have mattered to me. Carnivore, it's great. It hasn't cured everything, and it hasn't improved every marker like some people might claim it does, but it's certainly been a contributing factor for me to rebuild my health and be where I am today. Look, if you would like to do something practical, I would invite you to join this channel as a member. All you do is click that little join button down below any video of mine, and you can join. It's only, I think, $3 or $4 a month, and there's a list of benefits that members get that other people don't get, and it's a way of supporting me and journeying with me on this journey. But anyway, thanks for watching today. I will see you in the next video, and until then, God bless you.